In a recent homily, Bishop Barron very insightfully puts his finger on a heresy that is killing us. Why do I say killing us? Because he's talking about the relationship of the body and the soul. And he's talking about the heresy that ruptures the two. Literally, the word that describes the rupture of body and soul is death. That's why this heresy, rupturing the spiritual and the physical, kills us in a very, very real way. We're going to join Bishop Barron here, where he's talking about this war between the body and the soul and different attempts to deal with it. Both of them death dealing. Let's jump in.
Over the history of philosophy and religion and spirituality, what do you find? You find lots of attempts to deal with this problem. Now, one of them, very popular, by the way, from ancient times to the present day, is a kind of imperialism of the soul, an imperialism of the spirit.
So here he means this imperialism would be a rejection of the body in favor of the spirit. And here we might think that the Bible actually justifies this approach, where St. Paul, for example, he says, live by the Spirit and not by the flesh. The Spirit leads to life, the flesh leads to death. Isn't St. Paul talking about the body being bad and just emphasizing spiritual reality? Not at all. You got to read the Bible in its context. Paul is saying to live by the Spirit does not mean we reject our bodies or the physical world. Quite the contrary. To live by the Spirit means we open our bodies to the indwelling of the Spirit. Because if the Spirit who raised Christ from the dead dwells in you, then that Spirit will give life to your mortal body also. Bishop Barron gives some keen insights into where some of this imperialism of the Spirit comes from. It doesn't come from a proper understanding of the Bible.
Plato, and think of Plotinus, and think of Gnosticism and these ancient dualistic systems that say, I know the body, but the body's bad news, and the body is a prison. That's Plato. And the whole point of the spiritual life and intellectual life for Plato is to have a jailbreak, escape from the prison. Same with the Gnostics. They saw the spiritual spark kind of buried deep inside. And it's just we have to get rid of these bodies and move up beyond them.
So I want to challenge all of us here just to be honest about how has this Platonic view seeped into the way we see ourselves in the world and even the Christian faith. I do a lot of priest convocations, and I've asked priests this question over the years. I've said, you tell me how many of your parishioners, what percentage of your parishioners, these are the people they know who come to Mass on Sunday, how many of them, or what percentage of them would you say believe that the body is a prison from which we are liberated at death? The lowest percentage I've ever gotten from priests is like 75, 80%. It's usually like 90+% of their parishioners, the priests tell me, believe this Gnostic heresy. Gnosticism, basically spirit good, body bad. Manichaeism, spirit good, body bad. This heretical belief that the body is just something that gets buried in the ground, returns to dust. The soul is liberated from the prison of the body. And I say to them, if 90+% of your parishioners believe this heresy, let me put that in context. 90% of your parishioners, the good ones who come to Mass on Sunday, believe a heresy that attacks our faith at its very foundations, right? The afterlife is not where we are liberated from the prison of the body. Let me quote here Pope John Paul II, and I'm drawing this out of my latest book, Eating the Sunrise. I quote John Paul II saying that man's destiny cannot be understood as a state of the soul alone, separated, John Paul II says, or according to Plato, liberated from the prison of the body. No. The body is not a prison. Rather, the human person's destiny must be understood in light of what we claim to believe, it's right in our creed, we believe in the resurrection of the body and life everlasting. Amen. So our destiny must be understood as the definitively and perfectly integrated state of man brought about by a perfect union of the soul with the body. This is our faith, right? How many of us have been affected and affected deeply by this Gnostic heresy, spirit good, body bad, where we seek to live a spiritual life divorced from our bodies? This is not only an unchristian approach to things. My brothers and sisters, it's an anti-Christian approach to things. Let's pick up there with Bishop Barron.
Same with the Gnostics. They saw the spiritual spark kind of buried deep inside it. It's just we have to get rid of these bodies and move up beyond them. Forms of dualism today, you bet. It's a very popular option to glorify the spirit and to kind of denigrate the body. Does that solve the problem? No, because body and soul are, as it were, so woven together that all those attempts always kind of founder. They always come up against the rocks because you can't just leap spiritually out of the body. It doesn't work. Now, there's the other way to handle the problem. Forget about the spirit. These are people that live, let's say, in a purely sensual way. They're completely oriented to the body and the needs and the goods and desires of the body. Now, popular option, you bet, from ancient times to the present day. Think of even like today, a playboy philosophy or a purely materialistic approach to life. It's just satisfying the desires of the body. Whatever the spirit means, well, that's some kind of abstraction. What really matters is the needs and goods of the body. Is that going to work? Because like it or not, we're a hybrid of body and soul. And
this is so important, my brothers and sisters. When we live in this ruptured world, and that's the world we live in, a fallen world where there's been a split between the spiritual and the material, the only two options we have in this ruptured world without opening to the redemption of our humanity, body and soul that Christ offers us, if we're trying to cope with this rupture on our own, we only have two options: a spiritualism that rejects the body, or a materialism that rejects the spirit. Those are our only options. And you know what? Christianity is often assumed to be that spiritualism that rejects the body. Again, and again, we must say it. This is not our faith. If the body is something evil to be rejected, Christianity makes no sense whatsoever, because the incarnation would be blasphemous. What is our faith? Our faith is Christian faith. And who is Christ? He is the Word made flesh. Let me share a little more wisdom from the saints whom I quote here in my book, Eating the Sunrise. This is St. Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas describes the human person as the horizon of creation, because the human being is the place where the land and the sky meet, the physical and the spiritual. Created from the dust of the earth and the very breath of God, that's Genesis 2:7, dust of the earth, breath of God, the human being is both spirit and matter. This is not Thomas Aquinas. These are my own words. We, as human beings, we are a strange marriage of hummus and heaven, dirt and deity, spit and spirit. We are embodied souls, spiritualized bodies. The soul is not an immaterial self housed in non-spiritual bodies. Rather, the human soul is what makes the human body what it is. Not just a body, but some body. And then I quote the Catechism. The unity of soul and body is so profound, says the Catechism. This is Catechism 3:65, the unity of soul and body is so profound that one has to consider the soul to be the form of the body. Now, what does that mean? That's language that comes from Aristotle and through Thomas Aquinas entered into the language of the church. We can recognize this truth that the soul is the form of the body by looking at death. When the soul separates from the body, what happens to the body? It deforms. It returns to dust. But again, what we await in the afterlife is not a soul liberated from the prison of the body. What we await in the afterlife is what is promised at the end of time. God will gather the dust once again and breathe the Spirit back in. If he can do it at the beginning of time, he can do it at the end of time. This is our faith, the spiritualization of the material. They are not in fundamental conflict. The conflict comes only from the result of sin. Christ comes into the world not to liberate us from our bodies. He comes into the world to liberate our bodies from the prison of death. This is what happens in the liturgy. And so here I quote from Alexander Schmemann. He is a world-renowned liturgist and theologian. He says, in and through the church's liturgy, what do? We take the material elements of this world, and the priest prays for the Spirit to come into these physical realities so that they might be made holy, that they might become for us the bread of life, bread, spiritual life. Together they come together. We eat this bread. We live forever, not just in a spiritual sense. Our bodies also are taken up into the glory. And so he says that through the liturgical and sacramental reality of the Christian life, the opposition of the spiritual and the material is denounced, abolished, and revealed as a monstrous lie about God and man and the world. My brothers and sisters, if you have lived this death-dealing heresy of spirit good, body bad, or of body is all that matters and the spirit doesn't count for anything, if you've fallen either into spiritualism or materialism, here's the invitation. Incarnation, a spirituality of the body. What Christianity holds out to us is not redemption from the body. It's redemption of the body. If you want to go more deeply into this vision, may I suggest picking up this book, Eating the Sunrise, Meditations on the Liturgy and Our Hunger for Beauty. It will take you deeply into the mystery of a spirituality of the body. The link's below. Thanks for watching.